Hey guys, BoS here, bringing you this Dragonflight Frost DK Advanced Breath of Sindragosa rotation guide. Today we'll talk about all the different parts of min-maxing the Frost DK damage when you're running the Breath of Sindragosa talent build. I will do advanced rotation guides for the obliteration build as well, so don't worry about that. We'll cover both how you should prioritize your rotation outside of cooldowns, but then also take a lot of time talking about the Breath of Sindragosa window and how to optimize it as much as possible. In this video, I assume you've watched my beginner guide video, so I won't be covering the absolute essentials and assume some level of proficiency in the Frost DK. Still, to recap, outside of cooldowns, the Frost DK rotation is spend your runes on Obliterate, spend your Rain procs on Howling Blast, spend your Runic power, Frost Strike, and consume Killing Machine procs as quickly as possible. And then you use Remorseless Window on cooldown. That's pretty much it. Relatively easy. When it comes to prioritizing resources, it's quite evident that prioritizing runes is the most important resource for Frost DKs playing Breath of Sindragosa. Right, so let's talk about I think two additional topics here which are a bit more advanced in the single target rotation. So first of all, we have maintenance buffs, and these are Icy Talons and Unleashed Frenzy. They both trigger by spending rune power. One of them is just spending it, the other one is actually dealing damage with it, but it's essentially the same kind of thing. And they both have the same duration. Essentially, what you want to do is add a weak card tracker and make sure you press Frost Strike to keep it up. This won't be relevant for that much of your any given encounter due to the fact that Breath of Sindragosa spends rune power and will automatically keep up these buffs without you having to pay attention to them. Furthermore, with Remorseless Winter, I think it's important to discuss the fact that you can significantly increase its power by extending two specific buffs, or debuffs here. We have Gathering Storm and Everfrost as talents. Gathering Storm increases the duration and damage of your Remorseless Winter, stacking up to 10 times. Now the thing is, if you can spend enough runes so that you extend the Remorseless Winter duration until you go off cooldown again, what you can do is press Remorseless Winter again. It will refresh this duration to 10 seconds, yeah? And it will maintain the 10 stacks. So essentially, instead of getting this ramping damage profile, you start out with max stacks and you keep going there. Doing this is a huge DPS upgrade, and you should aim to do so whenever possible. Early expansion, it's going to be difficult because you need a lot of haste and a lot of resources to make it happen. Probably won't have that when you start up raiding, but after a while you probably will reach scenarios where you're going to extend a significant number of your Remorseless Winters. We have Everfrost, which is a debuff on the target you hit, which increases Remorseless Winter damage on it. Same thing here, it stacks up. If you press Remorseless Winter, it refreshes the duration without dropping the stacks, which is a big DPS upgrade. This is far easier to maintain. You still need a bit of a haste, but it's much more forgiving than Gathering Storm, which does require quite a lot of haste to actually make happen. You will do it during Bloodlust with a power rune weapon, that kind of thing, but don't expect to do it outside of these situations. Cool, so that's kind of like the core rotation as Frost, not too much to it. But let's talk about the Breath of Sindragosa window, because this is where this build gets all its damage from and where it really goes a lot into depth when it comes to optimizing. To start off, Breath of Sindragosa, it will deplete your runic power at a rate of 16 runic power per second. If it actually deals the damage a second after, paying for it, in a sense. When it's up, if you ever drop below 16 runic power and it tries to tick again, it will fail to do so and stop, right? That was a bit roundabout way of saying that, as long as you have more than 16 rune power, it will keep ticking forever. The whole point here is to keep it ticking for as long as possible. And in current situations, in raids, if you don't get any mechanics and if you can, cheese some stuff, you will reach more than 75% uptime on this ability. Yeah, that's kind of like your goal. if you reach that high, you know, like, okay, I'm doing a great job here. And if you do so, you're going to be doing a good amount of damage. When we discuss this ability, I think there's essentially 3 topics we need to cover: pooling, window priority, and cooldown usage. So first of all, we don't want to hit your Breath of Sindragosa with no runic power at all. It does generate some runes, but it doesn't give you any rune power. What does it? Yeah, it does give you some resources when you use it, but you want to start out with almost max so that you don't just drop it immediately. So generally, make sure to pool around, you know, 60, 70, 80 runic power. You can run some talent that gives you a very high maximum cap 140 rune power. So start out with, you know, at least maximum 50 to the top, and 1 to 2 runes. That's it. You don't need to like go max, but you still want a good amount before you get started. Once you hit the window, right, your number 1 priority is to not use any ability on something that spends runic power, right? So essentially, take your Frost Strike and remove it from your bar, because you're never going to press that. Furthermore, you're going to want to generate runic power as efficiently as possible, but this is just going to mean hitting Obliterate pretty much all the time. Once you're in your Breath window, Obliterate is going to be your main button. You're going to also be spending your Rime procs, because we do pick up Rage of the Frozen Champion talent, which means that we generate some rune power off the Rimes. However, you need to be somewhat mindful when to use them. Essentially, if you start dropping low in rune power, you need to start prioritizing your Obliterate above your Rime procs. Yeah. So if you're below 40 rune power, say, don't spend your Rime procs. Use your Obliterate if you can to try and get above that threshold, and then use your Rime procs. If you're going to use Rime procs when you're low on rune power, what can happen is that you drop your breath when you still have lots of runes to spend. You don't want that to happen, yeah? So prioritize not spending Rime when you're below 40 runic power. We're still using a Remorseless Winter as much as possible. It doesn't generate much resources that Obliterate, but the fact it deals so much damage is still worthwhile. Finally, when you reach the end of your Breath window, you start ticking down your like 30 rune power, so on. You have no runes available. What you're going to do is what we call button mashing. Essentially, every time your Breath takes, you have a chance to generate a rune through the Runic Corruption passive, yeah? So when you're very low on runic power, like Breath taking, you want immediately to spend any rune that you kind of generate there to get up a little bit higher. So at the end of Breath window, just sit and spam your Blit button, hope to get some procs to keep it going, yeah. You can also at this stage use some 1 rune cost abilities to just squeeze out the tiniest gain at the end. For instance, Death and Decay, which we generally only use in AoE, is a button to press at the end of your Breath of Sindragosa window. You have 1 rune available, using Death and Decay gives you another tick, do it. Yeah. Alright, another point I want to say is that do not overspend your runes early on in your Breath of Sindragosa window. I've seen some people, they pop Breath of Sindragosa and then they just spam Obliterate, overcapping on runic power without any reason to do so. Sure, you want to spend your runes so that you always have 3 of them recharging, but you don't want to spend them so much that you start overcapping too much runic power. Generally, at the start of your Breath of Sindragosa window, you can have lots of resources. What you want to do is you time your Obliterate so that after every tick of breath, you hit Obliterate, and ideally don't overcap. That's the vibe. So don't just spam them mindlessly, time them with your ticks, and don't overcap too much on runic power. If you have 6 runes available, you know, do spend them. But if you have 3, be mindful about it. Right, so let's talk about your cooldown usage, because this is where your primary breath duration is going to go up. As in, using your cooldowns properly is what will extend your duration the longest. We have 2 primary ones here, Empower Rune Weapon and Horn of Winter. Horn of Winter, let's start with that one. It has a 45-second cooldown. You should not be careful when... do not save this ability too long. Your breath will be longer than 45 seconds. If you hold your Horn of Winter, you're going to lose out on, you know, the gain later on. So whenever you can actually gain runic power and runes from it, press it. So quite early in your breath window, do press this button. Obviously don't press it when you would overcap doing so, but press it early so you can use it multiple times in your breath window, right? Empower rune weapon, it's slightly different. You're gonna probably be running 2 charges of this one, which means that we do want to use the first one relatively early. So first charge, maybe after 30 seconds. You should use it when you're kind of feeling like, I'm starting to get a little bit less resources that I'm comfortable with. Press Empower rune weapon, get that first charge going, and then the second charge, that's when you really want to hold on to it until we really need it, yeah? It's when you start dipping below 40 rune power and you don't have any runes available, press that second Empower rune weapon, get yourself into healthy territory again. Alright? To recap there, first one, use it a bit earlier than we would think. Second one, hold on to it until you really need it. Now, let's talk about how we can use BoS abilities and mechanics to increase our Breath of Sindragosa window. This is going to be an important aspect of it because you can gain significant duration from doing this. We have Anti-Magic Shell and we have Anti-Magic Zone with the Assimilation talent. So Anti-Magic Shell, whenever you absorb magic damage, it gives you runic power. Importantly, this needs to be like direct magic damage. You can't run into fire underground and pop AMS and get runic power. It needs to be like a BoS ability that hits everyone, or like a dot on you or similar. Technically, this is the difference between environment damage and non-environment damage. So it's only non-environment damage that can give you runic power with AMS. Anyway, if you know the BoS is going to do a big mechanic that's going to hit you hard, you want to pop AMS to generate that runic power. Do pick up the extra anti-magic shell talent whenever you can actually leverage this so that you get a shorter cooldown and longer duration. Just going to give you more runic power from it overall. Furthermore, anti-magic zone assimilation can give you 100 runic power if it absorbs, its entirety in magic damage. This is just insane. Any BoS that does any kind of AoE damage, magic on your raid, you should use anti-magic zone to increase your breath duration. Ideally, you would time it when you actually need it, but generally you will have timers that tell you exactly when there's going to be a big hit. You pop that anti-magic zone and you're essentially going to max out on runic power. Very useful. Finally, our third talent we can use is called Cold Thirst. Means that interrupts give you runic power. Just 3 runic power. Make sure you're part of any interrupt duration. Be quite, aggressive by using it, because that extra runic power is going to help you loads. Cool. Alright, so that was the breath window. So to summarize, pool a lot of runic power before you use your breath. In your breath, don't spend any other runic power on any other ability, and mostly press Obliterate. Use your rhymes, but don't use it if you're too low on runic power. At the end of your breath window, do spam your buttons. Try and use 1 rune cost abilities to keep it going for those extra few seconds. When it comes to cooldowns, use your Horn of Winter a lot. Use Empower rune weapon when you really need it, essentially, but the first use should be used earlier. Leverage Anti-Magic Shell, Anti-Magic Zone, and Cold Thirst to extend your breath duration even further. That's it. Now, this is kind of like the perfect scenario when there's no mechanic at all that can, get you out of range from BoS. That's also something you need to consider. Essentially, if you know that you pull the BoS and after 10 seconds, let's say, you're going to have to run out, do not pop your breath. Plan it in advance. Obviously, if it's up 75% of the time, there isn't that much you can do, but overall still, try and use it in scenarios where you would have a long, kind of undisturbed uptime on the BoS. Kind of, might be obvious to some, but it's something you need to think about before you engage any BoS or encounter. Yeah. So let's talk about AoE and Cleave. So what changes? Easy answer, nothing pretty much. The only addition to the Frost Decay rotation when playing Breath of Sindragosa and Cleave is the fact they will use Death and Decay on cooldown pretty much. You just get some extra Obliterate Cleave, which is nice. That's pretty much it. It's one of the advantages of playing Frost, especially Breath of Sindragosa, that you really don't need to change anything at all when you go in different scenarios. Still, let's talk about your other cooldowns, because we only talked about like only talking about Breath of Sindragosa and Remorseless Winter so far. So we have Pillar of Frost, use this on cooldown. Like, ideally you should time with your breath, but since breath has so much uptime, just use it so that you get as much overlap as possible. We have Raise Dead, press down cooldown, just put it in some macro, who cares. Frostfiend's Fury should be used for adds generally. It deals a ton of AoE damage, so save it whenever there's an ad wave. Ideally use it at the end of Pillar of Frost window, because Pillar of Frost is going to ramp up over time. But generally, just save it for the ads. Chill Streak, sometimes it's picked up. Just use it whenever there's more than one target. Not worthwhile to use on a single target, only 2. Sacrificial Pact is technically good to use in AoE outside your breath window at the end of Raise Dead duration, but you can just ignore that and be completely fine. Cold Heart, sometimes used in different builds. You want to use it at 16 plus stacks. Ideally use it at 20 at the end of your Pillar of Frost window and with the Fallen Crusader proc. But if any of those two is going to like expire before you reach 20 stacks, you should use it to not lose that buff. And it's fine to do that whenever you're plus 16 stacks of the buff. Also want to cover Abomination Limb. This should just generally be used whenever there's ads, otherwise use it on cooldown. Like, it doesn't do that much for you. It does give you some rank procs, which is nice, but overall it's not that significant. And it's mostly going to be useful kind of gripping in ads to help your raid deal with them better. Right. Finally, I want to show you the opener. So, got it up here. It's quite straightforward. Start up with Remorseless Window, double or blit, use any rhyme procs, and then just go into your Breath of Sindragosa window and take it from there. There are some variations on this. You can do triple oblit and then do your Breath of Sindragosa window with your Remorseless Window coming in there. You can even, if you want, save up a bit more Runic power, so you do like Remorseless Winter, double oblit, wait a couple of seconds, do another oblit, and then go into Breath of Sindragosa window. It's a bit about preference there. Alright, you can find the like raid talent build in the description here if you want to try out the one you see in the video. Do leave a comment down below, let me know what you thought about this specific video. Consider using an upvote or downvote when you thought about this. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.